It's Joseph here at Edge Dynamics, and I'm making a video today, or over the next few weeks, of my new stone, and I'm going to be building a false bottom so it'll be level, and obviously there won't be any gaps, and it will just bring it all together and stabilize it. The stone, it's a Nakayama Maruka Suita. So the stone's come to me and it's been cashew lacquered, which is a shame really, because I wanted to start from scratch and I had plans, but now it's lacquered, things have changed a bit. The bottom, I was intending to use plasterer's bond. I normally use concrete, and I may well, now it's already been cashew lacquered, just go back with the concrete. I've just got to think a bit more about that. What I'm going to be doing as well, once I've got a bottom on the stone, and the stone will be, the highest point is here, so we'll just be maybe a few mil over there all the way along. We've got some waviness here from the cut marks. This part slopes off a bit, and it's been cashew lacquered there as well, which I don't like, because it's now made my stone that wide. I think my first port of call on this will be to use silicon carbide powder, bring it down a little bit. It needs to come down. There's some rough grind marks here, so I think this bit slopes off a tad, and maybe there as well. You can't see it with the naked eye, but that must be what's going on there and there. There's some deep grind marks, and if I could bring this down a little bit, I could have my honing surface come out to the edge of the crack. This crack, I'm not sure what's going on with it. I may well try and gouge it out a bit, and I'd like to have epoxy in there. That would be a nice touch. So that's on the to-do list. Obviously I've got to be careful of these parts, the corners. If you're trying to sand in that direction on a corner, you can take out a slice, and that's the last thing I want to do. I've got this bit overhangs, and they've put polyfiller. Someone's put polyfiller in there. It's just like dust, wet. So it's got to be cleaned out, and that's got to be secured. I'm going to be using urushi. So I've used urushi lacquer a few times, and I've built a few bottoms as well, and it's all turned out good. So I'm self-taught, so some of my methods, I may be doing things wrong, but just for a warning, it's a bit of a tutorial, more out of interest, but it would be helpful, I think, for others in the future to see how I build the bottom. I mean, it's not like rocket science or anything, but you know, we've all got natural stones that aren't flat, and they don't sit flat. So if messing about with things is your cup of tea, then you know, this video should be good for you. Got my granite block, and I've got my silicon carbide. Got my stone there. Add some touch of 120. What I won't be doing is applying pressure, and everything like if I do circles to the left, I'm going to do circles to the right. I'll turn the stone around and I'll repeat. So basically I'm trying to wear it evenly, as even as possible, because a bit too much pressure on one side and you're going to get a slope. That's working really well. I'm making my way. I'm more interested. I can see here I'm working my way to the edge there, but this is the area I'm interested in. I want to be taking stone away from here. So let's carry on. See, there's some suction there. I'll pull the stone apart if I'm not careful. Right. So the silicon carbide is too aggressive for the stone, really, I think. So we go for 600, and that should be fine. What I did to the stone yesterday, so we've sanded the sides down with the silicon carbide. I then came to the belt grinder and rounded. You can see there I've rounded the edges. Just, I think it's aesthetically it's nicer with rounded edges. This cower here, that stuff's stronger than steel. Even the belt grinder had a hard time with that, and I couldn't use force because just try and let it cut gently. So I've rounded that. I've left the Maruka. I rounded this corner, chopped off the overhanging part, and dropped some epoxy up in there. Took my Dremel and I just with a diamond needle thing just started to Dremel this, and this crack here is actually just in fact more cower, and so I managed just to like scrape a top layer off, just if that, and then I dropped my epoxy in, and I've let that set overnight. Then this morning I lapped it with a diamond plate, just because I had the epoxy was coming over this way. So basically now I can hone right up to that edge because we're flat all the way across, and even if the tip goes on there, that's fine because that's lapped epoxy and that won't affect the my edges. The surface is complete. I've got around the edges, which I'll do that at the end when I'm finished. I also removed some of the cashew lacquer from the underside. It was, it wasn't thick, it was just sporadically here and there thin, and so we've took a bit of that off, and I'm happy with that, and we've got a flat surface now. It's important to have this flat if you want to have the underside flat. So I've got over here spirit level, and what my plan of action is, because what I normally do, let's move this, is take a piece of MDF or a piece of wood I'll well, just cover this up now, just because I don't want anything messing with the surface. So I'll just do that for the time being, and I'll trim this. I'll trim the sides, but basically I lay that flat on a piece of wood. And what I've done in the past is I've had pieces of wood on 4 sides, and I mean it's simple, but you can have a piece of wood jutting out there, a piece of wood out there, out here, out there. So as long as you've got 4 pieces of the same height, the same width, you can box it in. And then what I would do normally is find something to put under the stone to raise the stone up until I get it up near the lip of the top of the walls, and then fill it flat. But this time a little bit different, because I've got rounded and I've got rounded parts, so I can't just wall that off because of these parts. So I'm thinking to use one of these folders. I mean, I'll cut a piece off nice and square, and to use this I could tape this in theory all the way around, forming a wall, giving me maybe 5mm over the highest point, and then I could fill that with concrete. So what I've done is I cut these strips off the folder at 3 centimeters, like exactly 3 centimeters, and ran them around the edge. I've used a couple of rulers to firm everything up, and a couple of clamps to hold those rulers in place. And the stone at the highest point is measuring at 27mm, so the my borders come up by 3 or 4mm at the highest point, and they come up a lot more obviously at the lowest point. So this is ready for me to fill, and I'm going to be using, I've got some ready-made concrete, just add water, so I'll make it slightly thin, and I'm going to I'll mix it up, and then I'll come back. And the only problem I've just seen now is that this wooden ruler, vintage ruler, comes higher than the green. So how am I going to level that? How am I going to level it off with that sticking up like the I've got a metal ruler here. The only thing I could do is maybe hang it over the side and have it drop down there. So I'll readjust. We'll come back. A few minor adjustments there. I've dropped that wooden ruler off the edge, so I've got a clear view of the top, and I think we're ready to go. Right, so I'm back with my concrete, and I'm wearing a face mask if you can't hear me too well. We try and get in there. The weight of this will just do what it's got to do. think that is going to be about it. And I'll just leave this now. I've got no choice, have I? So as you can see, my concrete or cement, actually, my cement is set and that's nice and solid. I had a few parts which kind of fell back, so I filled them. I actually used no more nails to fill some parts. It just needs a light sanding, and then once it's had a light sanding, I'm going to urushi lacquer the sides and the bottom with this key urushi, which is raw urushi, and it's used as a base layer. So I will apply that, and I'm going to place the stone in a plastic. I've got a plastic box with a lid. I'll place the stone in there. I'll place one of these or two of these with water, and then I'll set it next to a radiator. Hopefully 1 or 2 days that should be fully cured. A few things about urushi lacquer, which I'm sure you know anyway, is don't get it on your skin. I've had it on my fingers a few times and nothing's happened, but the way it's got me, which is a warning to anyone who's using it for the first time, is you may think it's 100% dry and it's cured and it's fine, and what you don't realise is that there's parts of it will pull up by the tape edge, and it could be wet parts, or on a corner there could be a wet part. So I take a white tissue and I'll rub the white tissue around the stone looking for urushi. What I've done is I decided to remove the tape off the top. I've taped off my Maruka sign so we could keep that, and I'm going to stand it on this block like thus. Now every time I use urushi, I do use distilled turpentine, and it's not the original container. With the base, I'm not going to apply any distilled turpentine. I'm just going to let this go on thick, and we'll see, hopefully everything turns out okay. So we'll see how far that gets us, and I'm going to start with the sides. So it will cure really dark. You should be using this as well in a well ventilated area, or I don't know how well it has to be, but you can never be too careful. Another issue that I've just thought of is that I'm not going to be lapping this side of the stone, so I'll just use an alcohol swab and try and keep this clear of urushi, because I don't want to be back on this side with a diamond plate. And while we're here, we may just clean up the sides. That will save fixing that later. So here's the finished stone. The Kiirushi dried or cured, and there was a couple of little holes, little specks, so it required a second coat. But what I used for the second coat was a translucent urushi, glossy, and even though it's translucent, it still dries really dark brown, and that has sealed it 100%. You can see what's left of the Maruka stamp. It's like a piece of glass all the way around the stone, so that should last for years to come. I've done a bit more lapping on the stone. I've brought this side down a touch. I've revealed this pattern here. One thing with stones I do always look forward to is getting a bit further down and seeing what's underneath, but yeah, that's it, and I hope it was beneficial to some, and that's the end of the video. Thank you.